Okay, everybody, this is your PowerPoint preview for the Middle Ages, and this is meant to just kind of give you a survey of what you'll be reading about and studying for this time period we call the Middle Ages. So, our study of this thing we call classical music begins in the Middle Ages, often called the medieval period, and we're looking at a time frame of approximately 400 to 1400 AD. What you had pre 400 was the Roman Empire, and in 400 the Roman Empire fell. And for the next 1,000 years, Europe went through a lot of changes. So the Middle Ages, we can call it as the Dark Ages, the medieval period, and in the early Middle Ages, approximately 400 to 1000 AD, Europe was what I call Mad Max land. It was, very illiterate, superstitious, brutal. 99.9% of the people were just very poor. They didn't have countries. There was no Italy, Germany, England, etc., etc. Had yet to develop. And if you remember your world history, the feudal system was in place. That's where these wealthy families controlled land, and all these very poor peasants were permitted to live on the land in servitude. In the later Middle Ages, approximately 1400 AD, that's when you got towns and villages developing, borders of countries began to be established, and Europe saw what became the power of royalty, which was established. And all of a sudden, the countries had kings and queens, and that royalty ruled Europe for thousands of years. And in Europe, you were looking at two main places, Paris, France, which is the cultural center of Europe, and Rome, Italy, which is the spiritual center of Europe, because it's with the Roman Catholic Church that we begin the study of classical music. In the Middle Ages, the second greatest power was the Roman Catholic Church, the first being the royalty and the aristocracy. So the Roman Catholic Church needed to develop a music notation system to use in church service. So every single church service did the same kind of music. And in all church services, music is very important. So the first written down music was liturgical, was meant to be used in the Roman Catholic Mass. And this was the Gregorian plain chant. And you will hear examples of the plain chant, and you will read about the plain chant. Plain chant has a couple of characteristics. It's monophonic. You learn this from your second week art of listening. The music is free flowing. It doesn't have a beat, and it's very modal, which means it's using a melodic system that we are not used to hearing. It's not major, not minor, just some different unusual scales that we aren't used to hearing. And we can achieve variety of these plain chant melodies in three ways. That we can have the music being syllabic, one note per syllable. Pneumatic, a couple of notes per syllable. Say something like the beginning of the Star Spangled Banner. Oh, say. On the word oh, I sang two notes for the one syllable oh. Oh, say. And finally, melismatic, where we can have many notes per syllable. Something like Gloria. What I did in that one note syllable glo, I sang many, many notes on that syllable. So that was some of the things you'll hear in this Gregorian chant. In the later Middle Ages, you're looking at a picture of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. The Notre Dame Cathedral was a huge, one of the world wonders, especially of medieval Europe. And since it was a cathedral and it was super grand, the music was designed to fit it. So this is the inside of the Notre Dame Cathedral. You had a new music called organum, and it was some liturgical music, and it was developed at the Notre Dame Cathedral by Leonidas, often called Leonin, and Perotinus, often called Perotinin, and they are two of the earliest known composers. Before these two guys, music was composed, but nobody bothered putting their names on anything. What happened is they got away from the monophonic of the plain chant and started making the music polyphonic. They started doing separate musical lines onto an existing plain chant. So you will hear some of that in your reading. Now, the music wasn't all religious. The later Middle Ages saw a secular music, these troubadour songs. These were traveling musicians and songwriters. They kind of hung out in Paris, France, because that was the big place to be. And their songs are all about unrequited love, a love that is not returned. So you'll read about the troubadours. And in secular music, instrumental, you did have instruments, and most of the time, this instrumental music was not written down. It was pretty much just kind of improvised by these musicians with the instruments. And this first instrumental music was meant for entertainment and dancing. And a type of dance music at the Middle Ages was something called the estampe. And it's the first example where people actually started to write down instrumental music. Not complicated, very basic, maybe just one melodic line that an instrument would take. Other musicians would improvise around it. But it was, this first written instrumental music was for dancing. And I have posted a video of Carmina Burana. And Carmina Burana is 13th century secular music. They are songs of wine, women, and song. And what they are is a 20th century composer discovered these medieval tunes, and he put a modern orchestra to it. He didn't change any of the music or the melodies. He just put an orchestra behind. And the most famous example of this medieval music is O Fortuna, O Fate. And the opening song that you're going to see on the video, they're singing in Latin, but it's saying fate is unpredictable. So since you don't know what fate has in store with you, just drink and party. So I hope you enjoy this aspect of the third week module.